So good afternoon, and welcome to this, not last session, but at least in the end of the day. My name is Mikael, and topic of today, topic for this hour, or 45, is going to be how to deploy operating system from the cloud with no infrastructure, which is a weird topic. But I, like Sami, work at TruSec. And for the 4 last years, I've been working in what's called the Cyber Incident Response Team. That means that I walk around in garbage every day. I see things that you can't even imagine exists. But last week, we were getting a photo from a customer that says, I think this is the network cable. And the entire team looked at the picture and said, what's that? And I said, it's a token ring cable connector. The big one, in plastic. Last night, I recovered a server using ILO 2. It was running Windows Server 2008. No service packs. And the customer were hacked and breached. We run approximately 200 security incidents a year. Approximately 40 to 50 of them means that we need to reinstall everything, and there are no backups. The customer thought they had a backup. They had a backup software. They had a backup solution, but they didn't have any backups. All of them also have a deployment solution. Most of them use Config Manager or MDT. And they do have the imagination that that can be used. It can't, because it's encrypted. Because the threat actor today needs to make sure that you can't restore, that you can't redeploy. That's what they need to focus on, because if you can, then the threat is not real. They need you to get into panic mode, and they do that every day, and every customer that happens to be in this situation say, we never thought this could happen to us. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing as like walking on the street, and then you run over by a bus, and you say, I never thought that could happen to me. Do we have car accidents every day? We do. It's horrible. So, we use this solution in many cases, for disaster recovery, but we also use it for deploying machines in general. But here are a couple of samples that you can use. Privileged Access Workstation. Some of you had a session about Privileged Access Workstations, yes. And one of the things with Privileged Access Workstation is that you need to trust the source. Okay, so, we can use Config Manager. Cool, it's a member of the domain, yes. How many have access to the Config Manager? Everybody that works in the Config Manager team. How many is that? 4. Great. And then we have help desk, yes. And then you create a reference image on an MDT server, yes. And everybody in the entire company have access to this. No. Well, if they walk up to it, they can log on interactively, yes. So basically, the trust means that everyone in the company can modify the image that you're going to use as a privileged access workstation. Fantastic. Not really the idea of a privileged access workstation. This machine can be a cloud PC with one person with the ability to log on to it. The one and only that creates the image that we trust, and then we can use that. We then use HTTP and stuff like that. It also works across any network, because we use either HTTP or HTTPS. With the latest version of this, we use only HTTPS, which is great, because it's the universal security bypass port. Nobody can inspect the package anyway, so it doesn't matter. It just goes. If you try use HTTP, which we have done, then all these disgusting firewalls. It's trying to inspect. Here's a package. It's HTTP. It seems to be a bit of a WIM file. I need to investigate that. It's binary data. I can't see anything. But I will grab a next package and do the same thing. So the time it takes to download that file is forever. But flipping into HTTP makes it 10 times faster. That means you can have one deployment solution in one location, for the entire world, basically. And then you can integrate it. But before we go into more details about that, it basically looks like this. This is the current version that we use. This is what you can download, almost, because this has a few modifications. But you basically boot up. And then you can either select to have this or not. This is a pre-PSD. And then you wait until we do some tests and checks. And then you get a menu. And then you fill out the menu, and then you hit start. And then you walk away. I'm deploying this machine from that location right now. It's somewhere in West Europe, in Azure. And I'm doing that over Wi-Fi. Your Wi-Fi. This Wi-Fi. It's going to be interesting. How long time do you think it's going to take? Deploying an 11 gigabyte file across the internet. It's going to take how long time?
Days.
Do you think we can do it in less than 10 minutes? I think you can. As you can see, it looks like Config Manager MDT, because we are using the standalone task sequence that comes with Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. This is based on Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. We just run everything using PowerShell instead of VB script. Anybody remember VB code? Anybody old enough to remember? It's horrible. Wow. But we all remember that. So what we've done is that we replaced all the VB script with PowerShell. The interesting thing with PowerShell is that as soon as you start using PowerShell, you can do weird things that you can't do in VB because, we don't have enough space. What we can do is, for instance, mount a drive over HTTPS, which we do. So we are mounting the deployment share using PowerShell, so it ends up as a PS drive. If we have a PS drive over WebDAV, we can read the information in the other end. The other interesting thing is, do you still think it's going to take a week? The other interesting thing is that since we are transporting everything using HTTP or HTTPS, we can start using local accelerators. Friends at 2 Pint Software have a little tool that we can inject in Windows PE. And when we do that, we get a branch cache inside Windows PE and also in Windows. Which means that when we are going to a site and I need to redeploy 600 clients, that usually takes half a day. And the customer is watching this and go like, holy cow. Can we do this again? No, they never ask that. The first machine takes, because we've done tests, if I do it in China, behind the great Chinese wall, then the first machine takes approximately 10 hours because it needs to go through the Chinese firewall thing and somebody's opening the package. And they don't use traffic inspection. They have a guy actually that opens the package and go like, and they can't read it, then close the package and send it off again. So it takes 10 hours for the first machine to be deployed. The other ones is minutes, somewhere around 20 to 30 minutes. In Europe, it takes, in a great company, first machine takes 15 to 20 minutes, and the other one takes, 10 to 15 minutes. Slow, small company in, I don't know, Switzerland, maybe takes 2 hours to deploy the first machine. But we rarely more than an hour or 2 hours. I have tried to do this on an airplane. It works. I'm pretty sure nobody else can use the network at that time. But it's like, you can't deploy an operating system. Define can't. Allowed or forbid or no. So right now, it's going to apply the image. But this is the general idea. Now, you need to have PSD, which is download for free. But to get this acceleration, you also need a toolkit from 2Pint. The toolkit from 2Pint comes in 2 flavors, free or pay. The free is going to work perfectly fine. You don't need support, not for this. You might need other things they have in the suite, but for this, you just need performance. So it takes more time to apply the WIM file than to actually download the WIM file, which is horrible. So this is going to be done in a few minutes. So we have this. And we have customers that realized that it's pretty smart to have a deployment solution that is not connected to your infrastructure. It runs alone in the cloud. But then you use Config Manager for package deployment, for application deployment. Fine. Have a standalone task sequence, run it in the cloud, and in the end, it installs the Config Manager agent. Or joins to Azure AD, or Intune, or Autopilot, or whatever you want to have it in. But it means that since it's a standalone machine, and you're the only one with a password, don't use summer 2022 as password. And don't allow RDP from the entire world. But as long as you can protect that machine, you can always reinstall clients. And in a cyber attack, one thing that is really important is to get the ability to communicate with customers. And your email is in Office 365, so the only thing you need to have is a clean PC. You might not be able to do all business, but you will be able to reply and to talk to customers. Because if you can't do that, you're dead. I'm trying to call the company. They don't answer the phone. No, because it's a digital phone system, and that's down. I'm trying to email them. They don't reply. No, because nobody has a computer to reply on. Well, I'm going to the web page, but it doesn't exist. No, because it's down for 2 weeks. I would say that most customers that you had is going to think that you're gone. And you are gone from the face of the planet. And you don't want to have that. So having this solution is what covers our customers, but we also have customers that run it on their internal system. So I already did that demo. So what is it? Well, it's based on Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, which is a free download. You also need to have ADK. And I usually use ADK 2004. You can use ADK 11 if you want to, but it's just ADK. And ADK WinPE. Okay, so we have that. Then you use the deployment workbench. Like you did in Light Touch and MDT, it's nothing fancy. You create a task sequence, you add your application, like you used to do. You can run VB script-based application. Don't do that. I like PowerShell. But you can use exe files and MSIs and all that stuff. So it's just a deployment share. I'm going to show you how it looks like. And that's basically it. And then you create a boot image. And then you boot on the boot image. Maybe you don't want to do boot on the boot image. Maybe you want to do iPXE. Yes, you can do iPixie. Maybe you want to be smart and say, well, we bought the new cool HP laptops. They have a recovery URL in the BIOS. Can I point that recovery URL to this URL? Yes, you can. So if you then fire up an HP and you hit recovery, it boots and goes to this web page. It needs an IP address. So you need some kind of infrastructure, like a hockey puck with 3G. That's pretty much the only thing you need. First machine is going to cost you, but then you put that in a conference room and you deploy all the other ones in the same network. And the difference is going to be that if you need to recover your entire environment, it's going to take somewhere around 1 to 2 weeks before you have a deployment solution. With this, we are talking about a decision and an hour or two. There's a huge difference between having the ability to access Office 365, maybe your business system, if you're running anything in cloud, in a day or 2 weeks. And I'm not talking about the money, it's just the bad impact it has on communication with other customers. So that's basically how it looks like. You need some kind of Windows. I think the current server that I run in the cloud is a 2019 something. I know, 4 gigs of RAM. Woo. An IP address. That's basically what it has. Not much. I have a static IP address. You don't need to pay for them. You just click static instead of dynamic. I like to have that. And then you also click the name. So I have a static DNS name. Like to have a static. Dynamic DNS names are kind of bad when you put them in INI files because you don't want to have that. You need to have PowerShell 5.1, which you have in this operating system. And you need to have this. We are going to install IIS, which is a part of the installation. So let's see how you install this. And let's go here. Oh, that one is working. Oh, there it is. Okay, so here we are. This is just a plain vanilla Windows Server 2019, I think it is. And we need to run through this installation. It's very often that we hear customers saying, well, it's too complicated to set up, too much time. I need to read a lot. If you install Flight Simulator from Microsoft, it's going to take you a decade to figure out how that works. If you install this, it's going to take you 5 minutes. And people still install flights. Anybody tried Flight Simulator? Did you figure out how it works in 10 minutes?
It takes you 2 days to get started.
Yep. And then a lifetime to figure out how to fly? Yeah, I try to fly. It's always like, and then the ground comes closer and closer, and then, no, I shouldn't. I'm not a flying guy. So, here we are. So in ADK, you don't need everything. You absolutely don't need that. You're going to need the following items. And this is documented. You need to have just the basic stuff for ADK. And then you need WinPE. According to Microsoft, you're going to need ADK 11 to be able to install Windows 11. That's a lie. You can have any ADK. It's going to work perfectly fine. It's just in Config Manager, you need to align to have it fully supported to be able to manage. This is not supported anyway, so it doesn't matter. And the reason why I use ADK 2004 is because it is it's the latest version that supports both 32 and 64-bit. So it covers kind of everything. There is, it's really the most compatible ADK kit ever created. ADK 11 has the same limitations as Windows 11, only 64-bit, for instance. It doesn't work on all servers, etc., etc. It's better, it's more secure because Windows 11 is better and more secure. But the time you're going to use ADK is the time it takes to download the WIM file and apply it. You don't really need to have a fully supported ADK for the 25 seconds, minutes, or whatever it's going to take to just download the WIM file. You just need to work. So that was easy. Let's do the next one. This is a bit more complicated. Because now we need to have next, and install. And then we need to hit finish. So that was a bit more complicated. And if we do it there, we're going to see that we only have one more left. And that's going to be in the PSD master folder. Here we are. And I'm going to make sure that you can see this a bit better. Like that. Nice and shiny. Okay, so here we need to do set execution policy. Hello. So, isn't that dangerous? No. But hackers, they don't care about bypass policy. They ignore things like that anyway, so it doesn't matter. C:\PSD production. And I'm going to steal that name because I'm going to need to have it over here. Deployment share. So I specify a deployment folder and a share name. A share name is an old thing for MDT. It needs to have a share. And you don't need to add verbose. It's just, this is a really great way to see that you're working. So if somebody comes along and they are watching over your shoulder, it looks like you're working. So I always use verbose because that's an indication of actually doing something. Especially when you automate things, then you can have randomly PowerShell running just with verbose on. Doesn't need to, nobody knows what you're doing anyway. So it just looks that way. So we installed PSD, which means that we basically have this now. So if I go to the start button here and I go to my deployment workbench and I open here, and then you can see there's a deployment share that I just created, right? If I go here, it looks exactly the same way. There's no difference whatsoever, except for one little tiny thing. When you create task sequences, you have another type of template here. You have PSD client and server. You didn't have that before. And you need to use them. You can't use the other ones because the other ones are VB script based. These two are PowerShell based. I can't remove the old ones because they are hard-coded into the DLL. Can't even rename them, but they're there. So that's going to be the difference, basically. But it's not enough because we just installed it. We need to have this web thing, with the web stuff. We need to have web. Webby. Need to have web. So if we do this again, you're going to see that, tools. In the tools folder, we have a couple of folders. The first one is going to be we need to create a new certificate, root certificate. We need to have a certificate authority. I'm not going to install a full-blown certificate authority, so we're going to create a self-signed root certificate. Based on that, we will then create a server certificate. And then we're going to have a client certificate. So the boot image is going to have the client certificate because it's going to trust it. Well, it doesn't have a client, but it has the root certificate. And then the server has its server certificate. So then there's a trust between them. Can you use a proper certificate authority? Yes, you can. What's the point? It's just about communication between Windows P and the server, and as long as they are encrypted and they trust each other, I'm good. Nobody is ever going to browse into my deployment share and go like, oh, lucky me, they are using a public certificate authority system, which costs a lot of money here. No value. So the only thing we need to do is this. We need to create a root certificate, new PSD something, root certificate, root CNAME PSD root. I don't know. I will work in the industry for about 10 years. Let's do 20. Then I never need to do support on this. And the folder is going to be C:PSD deployment, PS production. There you go. And verbose. Short. And then you need to do the other one, which is going to be the service certificate. So new PSD service certificate. I don't know. This one is called it's called mdto5.mshome.net because it's on the isolated default switch in the Hyper-V, which is going to be the weird name it has. And friendly name could be the same. I don't know, 10 years. Me and my big buttons. Friendly name, there you go. Value cannot be 0. I missed something. Yeah, well, I do. You're right. That's my fault. I need to specify the root, and the root was PSD root, right? Well, there you go. So now we have a certificate, and it creates and drops the certificate here. So you can go into the PS production, PSD resources, and certificates. And here's the certificate, which we apparently trust, which is great. And then we have the service certificate is installed in the operating system. And once this is done, we need more. We now need to do a \new PSD web instance. And this is going to install IIS, including WebDAV and including configuration and including double quotes and all kind of weird things you need to do in an IIS to make it a deployment share. It wasn't really intended to be a deployment solution when they invented Internet Information Services. I'm pretty sure that they had no idea what this is. Once this is done, we need to restart. And after we restart, we run one more configuration, and then the server is done. So it basically takes, from scratch, install the server, download the software. I would say that you could have this kind of solution up and running, if you've never done it before, a day. Maybe 2 if you work 4 hours a day and watch Verbose the other 4 hours. But if you're not in any stress, 1.5 days maybe. When we set it up for customer, it usually takes a day and then you're done. And we do this for privileged access workstation and for recovery solutions. So the customer do have a recovery solution before they need it. It's like having a backup. You don't need it until you need to restore. And you don't need this kind of solution until you really need to have it. And at that time, there is no time because everybody's, and the CEO is in the corner going, and everybody's around him and going like, no, we don't. It's a horrible situation to be in, and I don't wish that for anyone, actually. But this is going to take a few seconds before it's done. That was the wrong one. Let's pick up the right one. Here we are. If we take a look on the server side, right now I'm poking around in the demo environment. This is our production environment, and we have extended this a bit. So, for instance, we use VNC. So all the boot images are installed with VNC, and they connect to a VNC repeater, which means that I can, behind the Chinese wall, access any machine during deployment. And then we uninstall it because I only need it during the deployment, and I only need it until the operating system has been laid down. So it's only active in WinPE. It's the only phase I need to troubleshoot. Once it's running Windows, anyone can walk up to the computer and fix it. It's just in WinPE, I don't want to be in the support with a Chinese guy that have never seen a computer and trying to make him extract log files. Doesn't need to be a Chinese guy. It could be a, I don't know, Indian guy or Australian. Even an Australian guy is complicated, especially when they don't know anything about IT. So here we can see how it looks like. And a task sequence is pretty simple. The default task sequence pretty much looks like this, almost. But you can see that it's basically an MDT or config manager task sequence. It's just slightly different. It does have validation steps here, right? And then we have some PSD steps that we run. We are formatting, partitioning the hard drive. We are setting the driver group. And when Johan and I were working on this, we first tried to do it exactly like MDT, you know, make a copy of it so it works. And then after working with it for 2 years, we're like, why do we want to move over all the crappy parts? Why don't we throw everything that is bad away and invent new? Yes. So now we support things like Vim packages for drivers, that's built in. We support VNC, for instance. We have monitoring features and functions. We also have, besides the having the cache functions, we have driver failback driver. If you can't get the driver from the model, then we have a fallback driver package that we download. And currently we're working with an awesome thing. You know that you can download all the drivers from the vendor, right? And there are pretty cool tools that you can install in the operating system that downloads the driver, right? I can't use them. I can't. Why? Well, the threat actor is going to be on a CDN network. The threat actor is in Azure, and they are in Amazon. They are at the same location where all your drivers are, and all the applications are. And we can't allow traffic to that. That's why I need to have a static IP address. So we have created a PowerShell script that we run on the server side using a RESTful API that says, if you don't have any drivers, the server is going to download the drivers for you, create a Vim file, and put it in the distribution folder, and notify the client and say, we now have the drivers you want. You can continue. That's pretty awesome. That was never in the MDT design from the beginning, because they thought plug and play is going to work. It kind of works. The weird part of this is that everything here in the deployment workbench is actually done by PowerShell, but all the templates that we have, they are really written so they run VB code, and that's hard-coded. And Johan and I was like, how do we modify the templates? And we were talking about Niehaus and go like, you know, is there a way? And he said, no, it's hard-coded in the DLL files. You can't change that. What if we do a search and replace in the XML file for anything VBS and replace that with PS1? Yeah, that works. So we do that. We on the fly change everything, because right now, even if this task sequence is a PSD sequence, if you look in the XML file behind it, it is referencing to VB script, which we change on the fly to PowerShell scripts. And looking in the folder, it basically looks like this. If I go to my deployment share here, and we open the scripts, you can see that there are no VB scripts left anymore. In fact, a lot of these JPEG files are also gone because they're not needed anymore. And we basically have this giant PowerShell script. It's not even as close as giant as the old one was, but it looks like this. It's only 1,000 lines. But it's not that complicated. It fires up, checks for a task sequence. If it doesn't have a task sequence, then it fires up the wizard, connects to the share, logons to the share, shows you the menu, you select, fires up the task sequence runs, task sequence is done, going like, I'm done, I need to reboot. Script picks up, reboots, and then it continues. And the cool thing about PowerShell is that how many of you actually do poke around in PowerShell from time to time? Anyone? It's readable, right? Compared to VB script, which it's not even close to being readable. Therefore, can you do any modifications to this? Yeah. Is it supported? No. Nothing of this is supported anyway, so it doesn't matter if you do any changes or I do any changes. It's on GitHub. If you want to do changes, and ask to say, hey, I added this function. It's awesome. Can we check it in? Sure. I'm going to be the one that says yeah or no. Just the only two options we have. Maybe we can have a discussion. But so right now, the entire team is about 10 different people that works with this and are developing it. And we have customers around the world that works with it. We also cheat. I love cheating. And the way we cheat is this. If you look here, you can see that we have the database here. We don't add computers to the database. Okay? We don't add computers to the. What we do is the opposite around. Computers are adding themselves to the database. So we use the database as an inventory system, which means that as soon as a machine boots up, it's going to run an inventory and send it back. How do we send it back? I need something that can retrieve information. The easiest way to do this is to use web services. Web services is something that you code, compile, and run as a web service. But the idea with this project was that we shouldn't have any compiled code. So we use something called REST API, which is based on PowerShell. This little nifty guy created a PowerShell-based RESTful API, which means that you can basically have a web services that runs PowerShell script on the other end. And the only thing you need to do is install this, start it, and then you're done. It does support all kinds of authentication, of course. If I go to my server here, which is around here. Oh, there it is. and we take a peek look on some of my tasks I have here. You can see that one of the tasks here is run PSD inventory. PSD inventory WinPE. Okay, let's open that. Run Windows PS WinPE somewhere. Inventory. That's OS. I need the other one. There you go. Let's open that up. And let's see what it does. So it imports modules. Okay, that's fine. And then it grabs data from the task sequence, creates a hash, then we convert it to JSON, and then we use invoke REST method, post, and then we point it to this URL. And this looks like a legit web services URL, you know, something coded, something really cool, and it's not. It's just a folder. Here you have the delete, the get, the post, and the put. And what did we have? We had a PSD post. Okay, let's see PSD post. And it was invoke PSD hardware. Yep. So I run that script on the client side, which then sends it as a RESTful API web request, and run this script, which grabs the data and stores it in the database. And we also had a period of time where we were playing around with Teams. Somebody said, is it possible to get a Teams message every time we deploy a machine? Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Let's do that. Yeah, then we turned it off. But that's the code for updating a Teams view every time you deploy a machine. So we use MDT, add PSD, add the RESTful API, add 2Pint software, and suddenly we have a solution that is hard to beat from technical wonders, price, and flexibility. And I need that to be able to deploy clients and servers behind the Chinese wall and in different other locations as well. Otherwise, I can't. I can't use traditional things. We need to invent our own tools. And then once we invented this, we realized that this can be used as the deployment solution for everyone. I mean, you can use Cloud Management Gateway to deploy. Anybody tried Cloud Management Gateway to deploy operating system? Easy to set up. So you need to install Config Manager, and then you need to install the Cloud Management Gateway, and then you need to get the operating system deployment, and you can do that in like an hour. It's going to take you 2 weeks to install that crap. Setting up Config Manager doesn't take an hour. That takes, I don't know, a day, a day. If it's scripted, when we do it, it's scripted, it takes 2 hours. Just to run the installer takes 2 hours. So what I'm trying to say is that all these awesome, cool things is going to work, but it's not going to work the same day you get hit by ransomware. Then everything you have is gone. And suddenly you're going to need something else. I'm going to give you another example. Let's say that you do get hit by ransomware, and you say, I'll have a backup. And the backup is not destroyed. Okay, so the backup actually worked. Yay, we can do a restore. Yes, where? We just restore it. You mean overwrite the existing servers? Yeah. The forensicer is not going to allow that for at least 2 weeks because they need to run through everything. Yeah, but we can restore it next to it. Do you have 51% overcapacity in your storage? No. so you don't have space? No. So you need to buy space? Yes. So first you need to buy space, move everything you have, so you can start restore. Now we restore everything. Now we can fire them up. No, you can't. They need to go through laundry, and we need to wash them. Because the threat actor has usually been in your system for a couple of months. And we need to figure out if they are in these systems. So if you're going to use your existing solution, and everything is great, and everything goes perfect, it's going to take you at least 2 weeks before you can start using them. And you will most likely use them properly later on. But the question is, do you need computers before these 2 weeks? Yes, you do. So either your partner that helps you with the cyber attack have it for you, or you raise your hand and say, like, we have a solution for redeploying computer, but it's encrypted. No, it's a standalone machine that runs in Azure, and we pay $5 a month for that. Great, then we can use that. You always need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. It's not the opposite around. Many customers think it is, but unfortunately it's not. You can download it here. It's on GitHub, Friends of MDT. It's about, I don't know, a megabyte or something like that. It's just tiny. I think the background picture that we have is the biggest file ever. But that's it, basically. And the reason why we run over HTTPS nowadays, we used to run HTTP, but it's actually faster than SMB. We didn't think it was, but it's weird, especially when you run over long distances. So we used to have, different accelerator types and things like that, but it's just SMB is great when you have a local network. SMB over distance is horrible. They're trying to get it better, but it's still SMB. So HTTPS is better. And we can use peer caching and from 2Pint. And what you're looking for, if you go to the 2Pint store, let's find this first. Friends of MDT, something like that. There you go. Here's where you download it. New version is a week ago. And 2Pint software, they have all kinds of stuff, but what you're looking for is the OSD toolkit. The web page is slow. Well, there it goes. That's the one you're looking for to speed up the process. If you go back to the machine that I had here, it's done. And I can log on. So it didn't take forever over Wi-Fi. So why did it take forever? Because I'm smart and I can cheat. I have one already deployed machine running as a VM on my laptop, which means that when the machine connects, go like, I need the following bytes. The other machine go like, I have it. Great! Peer-to-peer. So it's Napster, but you can't say that, but it's basically how it works. They have all kind of fancy name for it. It's just Napster, everything. Peer-to-peer, branch cache, super peer. Call it for Napster. We can't say that because it's a bad word. You can't say Napster, but that's what it is. So you can download it from here, and that's basically what we do. And nothing fancy, tiny download. You put it in the folder, and that's it. The only two things we have is the 2 steps. I think you saw them. Here, if I open the sequence, you can see the 2Pint software here is the branch cache enabler, and then we have the move branch cache data. One note, we deploy servers and client, and it works all the way back to 2012, I think, tried. I had a customer saying, well, we're running 2008 R2. No, not anymore. We are not going to reinstall your 2008 R2 domain controllers. That's not going to happen. We don't have licensing. You need to get licensing. But 2012 works, which is horrible, and you shouldn't run that either. For Windows 10, it works with any version of Windows 10. I think it works for Windows 7, but if a customer says we really need to run Windows 7, we tell them that they don't. And then we don't. I'm not going to reinstall Windows 7. Really, you are hacked, and you're running Windows 7 unpatched, and you want that back? No. You're going to get Windows 10. But our users needs training. No, but you do. Oof, sorry, can't say that. But that's basically it. So, any questions? No questions. Everything's crystal clear, right?
I got a question.
Sure.
Will it also deploy other OS?
So the question, will it also deploy other OSs? It will deploy operating systems from Microsoft. So we can use Windows 10 and Windows Server any version. But no, it does not deploy Linux or Unix or Mac OS or anything like that. They need to have another solution. In theory, we can, and we done it, but yeah. No, we can't. But since you're booting Windows PE, you basically need to do DD copy, and then you apply the image, and then you're done. So in theory, you can. It's just a task sequence is going to be shorter. It's going to be like apply, configure, done. But yeah, you can. But we don't have it in the support matrix, but it does work. Yes, other question.
How does the boot process for the installing machine works? From which media you boot the...
So how does the boot process work? You can boot from any kind of media. ISO files, a DVD, CD if you want to burn that, or a USB stick, or Pixie. So when we usually come in an environment, we need to turn everything off. One of the first things we do is create something called a bridgehead server. A bridgehead server is basically a laptop. On that laptop, we set up DHCP and Pixie, and then I put the boot image there. So we will have a local deployment solution at that site. But if you don't want to do that, you can also boot from iPixie, but in that case, you need something to boot a media. But the media can be anything that runs ADK or Windows PE. That was a good question. Any other question? Yes?
If you look at the branch cache, the two-point process actually accelerates not the first download, not all downloads afterwards. Is the branch cache just stored on that first machine, or do you set up a branch cache server?
So the question is, how does the branch caching works? The branch caching works the way that it's stored in Windows PE, so they actually appear when you're running Windows PE. When we are rebooting the machine, we are moving the cache into the operating system. Therefore, it's booting and it's pairing when you're running the operating system. Anything you download, WIM file, application, drivers, everything gets cached. It's stored in the cache for 30 days. Anything that's being deployed after the first day is going to be kept. As long as somebody is requesting the data from the cache, it will extend the period with 30 days over and over again. It is possible to pre-stage, and I know that the two-point guys are working on it, meaning that you basically take a USB stick and boot on that, and it contains the pre-downloaded cache. So when you boot it and install it from the stick, it also transfers everything into the USB stick. So the first time it's reading from the local drive, and then it's using that as a cache. So you can basically bring your own cache. It's weird. There's going to be an acronym for that, like BO cache or something. So you can do that, but you can also cheat and say, I'm going to put up a server, and I'm going to deploy here, right? So you can run a PowerShell script to pre-stage branch cache before. So if you know that you need to do this, then you can download a cache, yes, before you start deploying. Does it answer your question?
It does.
Great. I need to shut up because somebody's throwing me out. Thank you very much for attending the session. And if you have any questions, I'm going to be around.